Hello, everybody, and welcome to Work Smarter, Not Harder, Leveraging Data and Community for Improved Customer Health Scores. I'm Beth McIntyre. I'm the Director of Community here at Bevy, and I am so excited to be your host for today. For those of you who are new to Bevy, Bevy is the world's first community event engine that helps organizations build, grow, and scale their global community with community-led events. We've teamed up with our friends at Insided for this event. Insided is the only community platform built to help SaaS companies improve customer success and retention. I see that some of you are sharing your day already in 3 emojis. Thank you, everybody, for introducing yourselves. I'm excited to begin. Let's first talk through our agenda for the next hour. So, today, our expert panel will chat about how to look at customer engagement as part of our overall customer health scores and analyze the relationships between NPS and community participation. You will get insights on how to turn your customers into more engaged super users and increase contributions in your community. You also have the opportunity to ask your burning questions to the panelists. But before I introduce our amazing panelists, I would like to just tell you what my 3 emojis are for today, describing my day in 3 emojis. A tea emoji, the fried egg in the frying pan, and the little music notes, because I listened to some music today. So we do have some event guidelines for you to get the most out of the event, and I would like to share them with you. So first, chat with fellow attendees in the stage tab. These are your people, your community professionals. You're all in this together. So get the most out of this event and meet someone new. Make sure to ask questions using the Q&A tab and upvote the questions that you want asked. Throughout the panel, we'll be asking questions, not just at the end. We also ask that you close any distracting applications. Be present, be here. We're here for you, and we're excited about it, so you should be too. And this event will definitely be recorded. This is our most commonly asked question. Yes, we are recording. Yes, it will be published. And yes, we will tell you when it's published. And also, of course, pro tip, Bevy does work best with Chrome, so make sure you're on the right browser. All right, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce our panelists. First up, Remco Devries is the VP of Marketing at Insided. He started as a growth marketer responsible for building the inbound marketing channel. Since joining, he has helped Insided grow its brand, qualified pipeline, and revenue within the SaaS and subscription-based software segment, while successfully rebranding to the only community platform for customer success and other customer-facing teams. Hi, Remco.
Hi, I love it. That's me.
I did a good job?
You did. Yeah, that was awesome. Better than I could have.
Great. Well, let's bring up our next panelist. Sophia Rodriguez is the Director of Community at Venify and an award-winning community professional. In her role, she educates, empowers, and enables machine identity management professionals. She has managed online communities, user group programs, top contributor programs, and field marketing events for B2B, B2C, and PTP organizations. And I, for one, am always excited to hear Sophia share her insights. Welcome, Sophia.
Thanks, Beth. Excited to be here.
Last but not least, David Spinks is the founder of CMX, the world's largest and most passionate network for community professionals. He's also the VP of Community at Bevy. He is also the author of The Business of Belonging, the host of the Masters of Community podcast, and inspires our almost 20,000 CMX members every single day with his knowledge, experience, and advice.
Thanks, Beth.
Welcome.
I like how your 3 emojis was just your breakfast, by the way.
And the fact that I listen to music
while eating breakfast.
Okay, well, let's kick it off. I would love if, in a tweet-sized answer, share why you are passionate about community. David, do you want to kick us off?
How deep do you want to go? Like childhood trauma?
Tweet-sized.
Okay, tweet-sized. I just think that finding belonging is critical to being happy as a human, and nothing brings me more joy than helping other people find that or build it.
I love it. Sophia?
I'm passionate about community because I believe it's the key to unlocking our full potential and purpose.
Okay, I hope everyone's writing these tweet-size quotes down. This is where the money is. Remco, why are you passionate about community?
Well, I really wanted to use belonging, but now I can't. So let's just say that to me, community is also, in a large way, people just being themselves and learning and interacting and being humans to each other. And I love that.
Awesome. Well, Remco, I would love to ask you, because Insided, this is what Insided is kind of known for. So why don't we start with a basic definition? What is a customer health score and why is it important?
Oof, yeah, I think so. Most people probably know customer health scores from the red, yellow, or orange and green scores that you get in either a customer success tool or something else. And I think that's also what health scores are. But I think if you had to make it super simple, you're looking for some behaviors that indicate that your customers are successful. And if they show those behaviors, you can actually then sort of confidently say that they are, which makes you happy, which makes the customer happy, and which would put an account on green for me. So I would always love to see health scores actually be that simple instead of focusing on crazy metrics and adoption and all these kinds of things. All important, but in the basis, especially as we're now talking to a community crowd, figure out what they really want and if they can do that with your platform.
Cool. Well, and every community's health score would be different, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well,
and I know.
Yes and no. I would say that in every community, you're looking for certain things, like very simple, like I just said, people being humans to each other and interacting with each other and actually sharing pieces of value with each other, probably along a same topic or business or something like that. So I would hope that that happens in any community, but the topic is probably different. And also maybe the way that people are doing that is probably a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And David, at Bevy and CMX, of course, we are hosting consistent events all the time. They are the true heartbeat of what we're doing in our communities. So how do we share engagement and health of our events?
Kind of feels weird that you're asking me this when like you power a lot of this at CMX. It's like, well, what do you do, Beth?
I'm like, how well have you been listening?
yeah. This is a test on me, actually. But I mean, we do a lot of things across all of our community channels, specifically with events. One thing we do is we just use a lot of surveying, and we track NPS across all of our events, whether those are events that we host ourselves or events that are hosted by community members. And now, like, NPS is something that doesn't always perfectly apply to community. I think it works for CMX. But like if it's a community where people may not want to recommend it to others because they want to keep the community to themselves, you may not always want to use NPS, because NPS asks the question, how likely are you to recommend this community to a peer or to someone else? Well, if this is like your private inner circle, maybe you don't want to do that even though you love it. So actually, it was Evan Hamilton the other day who was really recommending using the product market fit score, which asks the question, how upset would you be if this no longer existed? Which made me think maybe we should switch it. We'll talk about that later, Beth. But we really, we use those surveys. And then similar to what Remco was just describing, I think it's always good to ask what was the value that you expected to get from this event or from this community, this experience. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, the extent to which they got that value, because then it really is targeting, like, did we meet your expectations? Did you get the thing out of this event that you came for?
I really like the how sad would you be if this didn't exist anymore. I think that can definitely give you a lot of insights that wouldn't be there with the recommendation question.
I think I would definitely miss the CMX Slack channel.
I would too.
Hey,
I don't know what score that is, but
Health.
there we go.
community health right there.
There you go. Green. That's our score so far. Yes. Sophia, which metrics are most important to you when measuring the success of your programs?
Beth, I would say that earlier in my career, I made a lot of mistakes and that I was struggling to show the value of community. And I was just throwing everything, right, that I could. I was throwing how many members, how many attendees, are we seeing month over month growth? And I don't think I was alone. I think I saw in the latest CMX community report that 38% of respondents said that it's really hard to show community value. And now I would say that my philosophy is definitely to be more focused, but to focus on metrics that show one, stickiness, and two, member value. And I definitely agree with what David and Remco have been saying. I think those fit within the stickiness and the member value.
Well, and so can you expand a little bit on that? Because there's qualitative and there's quantitative data. And so what's the importance, I guess, of both? And like, would member value is good, but like, what about business value? Where does that fit into there?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that the last point that you brought up is something that is going to depend. I think we always talk about it depends, right? It depends on where your organization sits within the business. It depends on the purpose of your community. Is it support? Is it product enhancements? And so always with it depends. But for example, like I would say, let's take a forum. You could focus on the number of posts and the number of members. Those are things that people are always going to ask of you. But the stickiness and the value come from the thread, the replies, the actual discussions that members are having with other members. It's how often members are coming back to one thread because they found it really helpful. And that qualitative data, I see it as coming from even comments where people are saying, this is the most helpful thread I've ever seen, or this actually helped me out. I'm going to share it with other people. And I think where you start to see the value in both, for example, it's like David, right now, he was talking about NPS. I got a little triggered because I always mark 0 in those. I'm like, I wouldn't recommend this to my friends. My friends aren't in tech, so I'm not going to talk to them about this product. But in your product community, I will talk about how great your product is and how helpful it has been to me. And so you have both of these data points, like quantitative and qualitative, where they're both true. I did mark a 0, but in the qualitative one, I'm seeing how helpful something is. And I think that's why it's important to always be getting those two different data sources.
My heart dropped just when you said you always give a 0. I was like, what? But I understand when you explain yourself. Okay, I understand. There are a couple of questions coming through. First, I'd like to ask, and this, Sophia, this one makes sense for you to answer. Donna Ting, how do you measure stickiness and membership value?
Sure. I think, so I'll give some examples because I think it's something also that's going to depend on what you have available to you. I'm more of the mindset where I don't think you should try to boil like the ocean. If you have certain tools or platforms that give you visibility to certain metrics, use that because it's simpler, right? So for example, stickiness, you're trying to show that your membership isn't just increasing, but that members are coming back and they're evolving in your contributions. So that might be saying daily active users over monthly, that ratio. It might be repeat attendees, repeat visitors. It could be a comparison in retention. For example, saying a community member, someone who's in the community of our product, they're more likely to stay using our product than someone who's not a part of the community. And like that's super valuable in showing the stickiness. On the other hand, member value, it's something around, are the members finding your content helpful? Are they liking it? Are they voting on it? Are they commenting on it? Are they also viewing it and sharing it with other people? I hope that gives a couple of examples of what those two mean.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thanks, Sophia. And so Sophia also said that in the beginning, she like made some mistakes and tracked everything. So Remco, I would love to hear from you. What are some common pitfalls of accurate customer health scoring systems?
Ooh, there's a lot. So maybe in the community sense, I would say that if your health score is focused on, for example, only growth of the community or stuff like that, then you're going to be super disappointed. Maybe the first 2 months you won't be because you just open shop basically, and everyone's joining. So the first 2 months, really green numbers, great percentages. But then after that, eventually it's still going to grow, but it's not going to grow as fast as you promised your board of directors, probably, if that's your most important metric. So there you go. I think that's probably also the thing that I think is most difficult about most health scores that I've seen, is that they really focus on stuff that people know that they can exactly measure. And these things don't really relate to each other. And they sort of are put together in a health score. We give a weight to each one of them, like community growth is 40%, and then maybe how many responses you get on average per topic is another 20%, and then something else. And then basically that makes up your health score, and you decide whether or not something is successful or not. And I think while those things all are interesting and they probably also matter in some way or form, it doesn't, to me at least, indicate success. I think success is to be found in things that are probably a little bit more difficult to measure or need some correlation with other metrics. But yeah, so maybe for an example, so when I think about community growth, I never think about, okay, members need to go from 300 to 3,000 in 2 months. I always think about, okay, so you get this core usage of your community, because if you're a business, for example, you know that you have a bunch of customers that are really likely to engage. You get them on the platform, you start testing the platform with them and the types of content and see if it's valuable for them. And then it's going to grow steadily. And what you're going to try to do, for example, is keep participation up as the community grows. So let's say 20% of your users comes back. If your community grows in a year from 300 to 400, if you keep the 20% stable, activity is growing, right? So I always try to tell people to just make it as simple as that. If activity grows at a stable pace and you keep people coming back at a stable percentage, or at a stable rate, I should say, that was Dutch English, then you're doing well, and you should be okay with a measurement like that. You don't need these big crazy numbers or big bang kind of things.
Okay. That actually is a really good segue, I feel, into Hannah Rafter's question. Remco, if you could answer, if you have any advice, how do you track certain metrics if the community platform you've chosen doesn't track them?
Good question. It's hard to believe that there's a community platform out there that doesn't integrate with any form of data source these days. I don't know. I don't really know any that doesn't have some way or form of rudimentary metrics, at least. But yeah, I would track things as basically as simple as I just said. So it's like half the same answer. There are always some metrics that you have, whether it is user growth or a couple of topics that have done really well, or you can actually turn the measurement around. And if you, for example, are using a marketing campaign to get people to your community, and after every campaign you see people sticking around more or stuff like that, you can also use that to also talk about the value of your community, not just about the value of your campaign, for example. So yeah, I think there's probably always some data points. So it takes a little bit of creativity maybe in that case. But I don't know of any platform that doesn't count members, activity, or at least replies or stuff like that. So I think there's always something that you can correlate to people actually using it or not.
I appreciate that advice. And I think that you're right. There's definitely metrics in every platform, and how you calculate them is really where the kind of story comes from. Okay, David, you recently tweeted about community vibes, which is a new framework that you're working on in that big, beautiful brain of yours for measuring community health. So share with us, what does vibes stand for? How can folks apply it to their communities?
Sometimes I just throw out stupid ideas on Twitter, and then it turns out to not be stupid, and now it's a framework that I have to actually account for. So the vibes was like one playing off of this whole like Web3 thing around like, what are the community vibes? And like the health of a community being something that you almost feel. So kind of started with that word, but then as I was playing with it, I was like, we talk so much about community health, and there's a sense of community theory, which is a pretty academic approach, and then there's like NPS and like one-off things. And I was just trying to think about like what are the elements that go into community health. And so vibes ended up standing for velocity, which kind of speaks to the rate of engagement and growth of engagement within the community. I is for inclusion. So do members feel like they are included, like they're welcome, like their voice is heard, like they belong? B is for benefits. So kind of going back to what I shared before, what is the value that they are hoping to get out of the community, and to what extent are they getting that value? E is for evangelism, which is a really good sign for most communities of are people repping the community? Are they wearing the swag? Are they talking about it publicly? Are they inviting new members into the community? So that's a really good sign of the health of a community as well. And then S is for sustainability, which is actually not something I've ever heard talked about in community, but it came to mind as something that's really important, which speaks to our members in it for the long run, right? And you can pretty much all of these, you can use both qualitative and quantitative data to measure. But looking at sustainability and asking people like, do they expect to still be participating in this community a year from now? Just understanding how they're thinking about it in terms of long-term investment versus like, I'm just here to get some quick value and then leave. So yeah, velocity, inclusion, benefits, evangelism, and sustainability. I remembered it.
I know that I am not alone here. I love a framework, and more so, I love an acronym. So keep them coming, David. Keep those crazy tweet ideas coming.
Will do.
Which came first, by the way, the acronym or the framework?
In this one, it was the acronym. Not always. Spaces came like from like, let's come up with the concepts and then see where the letters make sense. And then the art of making an acronym is really fun. We should talk about that one day. But vibes started with like, I wonder if I can make vibes into an acronym.
Was it at all inspired by that Willow Smith song, like "Caught a Vibe," where you hear
it's very, yeah, it's just all in the zeitgeist right now. Yeah.
It's just a good word. It's just a really good word. And Blake wanted to mention Remco and David. He loves your glasses. So just a quick shout out for your style.
Nice. They make me look smart, so I only wear them on webinars.
Well, and Blake is one of our CMX Connect hosts and one of our kind of Power CMX members. So thanks for joining us, Blake. And thank you for giving me the perfect segue to now talk about super users. Sophia, I would love to hear, because I know that you have recently just launched some programs. So how do you identify and serve your super users at Venafi?
I'm going to hit you all with another framework, since we love acronyms and frameworks. Holly, our leader of the team, has a framework called SNAP. It stands for Status, Networking, Access, and Perks. I personally find it easy to remember because it reminds me of the Bend and Snap Legally Blonde reference. Anyone that didn't get it. But back to it, SNAP is a framework around how you can incentivize and serve your super users. Check it out if anyone's thinking about how to do this for their program. They're trying to think of ways to reward their super users. And at Venafi, my current company, there's sort of been two stages of the community. Those were separated by a platform migration. So with our first platform, we had super users, and the way that we saw them was that these are folks who are constantly coming back and they're helping others. If someone posts a question, they're the first to respond. They're actually sharing like very helpful advice and tips for them. And our super users at that stage, they, for example, had the exclusive networking group. It was only for them, and we got to have that direct line with them. They also got access to information before others, feedback opportunities, and they also received perks like swag. I remember leading up to our customer summit, they got this really cool sort of like watch party kit where they got popcorn, custom cookies with their names, cold brew, like fussy socks, anything they could need for watching the conference online. And in the second phase, it's starting to evolve. Beth, like you said, like we very recently launched, so it's very new. This new platform gives us more opportunities. There's more components. So now they can share product ideas, they can join events, they can join collaboration groups. So that definition of what a super user was has evolved along with the abilities to have engagement. And right now, at the early stage, we have a leaderboard. So the leaderboard gives them that status. It gets to show who the most active users are. The badges reward their engagement, the type of actions that we want to see. And thinking of the future, like we're just going to have more ways to incorporate access. So things like giving them access to our product team, evolving the badges, for example. So it's not just focused on like, here's a badge that you got for doing something, but something that matches our company values, and focusing more on not just extrinsic rewards of like, you get swag, but something that is tailored to them and more intrinsic. For example, like, hey, you get this badge and you get the option of, do you want a cool hoodie? Do you want to donate to a nonprofit? Or do you want to sponsor another member getting a certification for free? Because like, as we know, the same thing isn't valuable to every single person. Like people find different things value. So we want to make sure that we are tailoring experience to each member.
That's awesome. I really appreciate, tailoring the experience. And you're right, because every member does things in your community for different reasons. Remco, have you seen any other great examples of how you reward super users?
Well, what I always think is super interesting about super users is that they're usually not in it for a reward at all. Or you can't. So I used to work at a large telco in the Netherlands, and that's actually also how I know Inside It, because I bought Inside It for them at some point. And we built this entire support forum, and people were just asking questions about reception and iPhones not working, and all those kinds of things. And we actually started to see a lot of members sort of pop up through the ranks of being there first for every answer. Right, they would be quicker than any team we had internally, and also knew more. Especially if things got more technical, there would be people that knew every in and out from a phone or an internet modem or whatever. And the only thing it turns out we could do to really make them feel like they were special is have a super user day. That was the only thing that we could do. So we would actually invite them to our office, tell them what we're doing, what's going to change, what do they like to see changed on the community, also what's coming in terms of products. And at those events, we would also always ask them, like, can we do anything? Can we send you swag? Do you want to test phones? Do you need a different title? And while some of them wanted to be called an iPhone expert, obviously, I think most of them just said, no, this is what I like to do in the evening, and I love helping other people. And basically recognition on something like a leaderboard was enough for them. And this is also what I think is super interesting about a super user, because it's like this, you can't really grasp why they're doing this, but we should all be really happy that they are. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that we often find ourselves kind of scrambling to reward them because it's like, don't stop.
No,
And
please
also,
stay. Yeah.
I want to make this look really good so other people will do this too. And it looks like there's actually a lot of questions about super users from our attendees. So I would love to just maybe round robin.
Can I make one distinction still? So I do think that B2C, B2B is a little bit different, probably, because B2C, like the example I just gave about iPhones, everyone knows something about Apple, so it's easier to get into a conversation. But if you, for example, are a B2B SaaS platform, it's probably a little bit harder. So everyone is logging in and probably using the same features, so there's some sort of common ground. But when there's a technical question, it's usually harder for people to get involved. So I think, especially on the B2B side, if someone's really helping out, it actually does make sense to at least make sure that they feel more included than others, which sounds a little bit disrespectful, but more included than others. So what we have done in the past is, for example, open up a window to actually talk to product, or be on a customer advisory board, or host a session with other newer customers or newer users of a community, so that they, in that sense, I think at least did feel a little bit more valued and maybe even more valuable. but yeah, I can't really say it's not measurable, right? So, but I do think it makes more sense in a B2B space.
Right. Okay, let's dive into some of these questions. Sophia, I wonder if you can answer. Let's go Aaron White. Do you have an actual metrics or analytics-based formula for identifying super users, or is it more organic?
So, yes, there's an organic component to it because I think as you're active in the community, you're going to be able to see who those really active voices are, active super users. We're actually lucky that we have the budget to have tools for this. So we have used Comscore and we currently use Insight. So both those platforms have information to show us who super users are.
There you go. Easy. And then David, do we pick / like reach out? This is from Hannah. Do you pick or reach out to engaged members to be super users or ask people to reach out and express their interest? And how do you get buy-in from super users?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the stage of the program, right? Like if you're starting a brand new influencer or ambassador program or power user program, then there wasn't an existing channel for people to raise their hand yet. And so you're probably going to have to do a little bit more outreach yourself to find the people that are a good fit and ask them if they're interested in the program and bring them into it. That said, sometimes people will already be raising their hand and reach out and say, hey, like, do you need moderators, or do you, can I host an event? Or they'll already ask if they can volunteer. And that's another really good sign that that person could be a good ambassador or power user for you. Then as the program develops and becomes more mature, then you're creating more existing channels for people to raise their hand and apply to join. They see examples of other power users. They see the experiences or events or things that they're creating. And so then it becomes a little bit more organic, I think. That said, I think if you're using tools like Comscore or other ones, and it's helping you identify people that seem like they would be a good fit, even if they haven't volunteered yet, it never hurts to reach out and just say, hey, really appreciate all of your contributions to the community. You've been amazing. Just want to make sure you're aware of this program if that's ever something that appeals to you, right? And just make sure that they feel aware of it. How do you get buy-in from the super users? I mean, I honestly, I think Remco covered that pretty well in terms of, what motivates them. I'll just say my belief is that you can't ever change someone's motivations. You can only invest in their existing motivations. So if they don't have that intrinsic motivation, you're not going to be able to convince them to. And trying to only use extrinsic rewards can actually backfire in that regard, because then they're only going to be doing it for the extrinsic reasons, not the intrinsic reasons. So
yeah, I would say that the one mistake I always see made when it comes to, let's call it, nurturing a super user, is that people tend to forget that they joined the community for a reason as well, before they were even a super user or this major cool player in the community space. So you need to make sure that whatever the community was doing for them, why they joined it and why they became active in the first place, is still also relevant for them. And not only focus on the let me reward you for your participation and being this awesome super user and being there for other users. No, you as a community, as a company, whatever the reason is that you have a community, still need to be there for the super user and still play into that sort of intrinsic motivation that they once had to be there. Otherwise, you're going to lose them in the end. Even if you give them 20 sweaters, they're not going to stay.
Beth, can I add on to Hannah's question?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Hannah, this week I saw there's a report, I think it was pulled together by Bill Johnston, Structure 3C. Correct me if you're in the chat and you know the right name, but they pulled together a report of advocacy groups. And so you can see actual case studies of companies like, I think it's Spotify, Salesforce, Atlassian, and like how they do their programs. So you can see, some of them are actually recruiting super users or asking them to apply to the program, while others are recognizing what they're seeing as far as the activity. So that might be a helpful resource to you to kind of see like what is the best fit for you.
Great advice. I think, Sophia, these questions are really good. So everybody keep them coming. We still have lots of time to answer these questions. Sophia, I want to piggyback on that with Jasmine's question, which is specifically about metrics. What metrics are you measuring, and have they changed since you've changed your program? What metrics are you measuring success and business value for your super user program?
So we don't have a super user program structurally like very formal at NFI right now. We have had it at other companies I've worked at. Things that we looked at included like the number of contributions they were making, more around like advocacy, like are they talking about the product or the company within the community, outside of the community? How much are they posting? How much are they sharing? Are they participating in other programs? Like, are they a mentor? Did they sign up to be a user group leader? So really, I would say, look at all the programs, all the opportunities that exist in your community, and identify, what's important in each of those programs. What do you consider to be valuable? And then use that to start tracking, what's important. How do you define a super user? And I think on the business value, like a huge selling point that I've seen people care about in the leadership level is the advocacy part, right? Because it's really hard to buy or to try to pull this off with like marketing or sales. Having a customer say something like, I'm super happy with the product, I'm referring this to other people, like I'm getting out there at conferences or other communities and talking positively, like you can't buy that. That's something that comes from the individual. And I think showing those data points around like that advocacy and showing that's what I've seen really resonate with leadership.
Great advice. Okay, I did see a question from Jen earlier that I feel like it's not really relevant to the super user program, but I do definitely want to have this question answered. Jen asked, how often do you survey? So this is back when we were talking about surveys. And when is it too much? Remco, do you want to answer that one?
Definitely. So I would say that it depends. I personally think that if you ask for an NPS score or do an NPS survey every month, that it is too much, even if you do it in product or something else, because people don't want to tell you every month that they would recommend you to whomever. So I think that would be too much. You need to be careful with those kinds of things. I would pick maybe twice a year or something, and then leave it at that. Even if you feel like you don't have enough data, then you'll have to deal with it. But I do feel like as long as some stuff is happening in the community that warrants a survey, or you're releasing new things, rebuilding the community, restructuring stuff, you can definitely ask people for their opinion, and they won't mind as long as it's very relevant for the environment that they've chosen to participate in. So I won't make it too company centric, won't make it too NPS centric, but as long as it concerns the community that they are lovingly a part of, then you can definitely ask them questions and do that once a month, or maybe even twice a week if you're doing something big. I would definitely do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and selfishly, I'm actually getting some great information here because at CMX, we do a annual health survey with an NPS question and multiple other like how satisfied kind of questions. And then we've recently implemented a new member health survey that new members are sent an NPS question after 90 days of being in the community. And I'm starting to think that perhaps that should be the question that changes to the how sad would you be if this didn't exist, like after spending 90 days with us. So anyway, that's just me being selfish and learning a lot from this.
I would say that it's important to keep that question, whatever it is, whether it's how sad are you or how likely are you to recommend, try to keep it consistent across all of your programs, because then it gives you a point of comparison. So you can look at what is your NPS or your community market fit in your events, and you can compare events to each other. You can compare events to your online spaces. You can compare your online spaces to each other. So like using that consistent data point is effective. Otherwise, you kind of have different measures for all your different programs. And there might be a day where you want to make a decision on what to focus on more or less. And you won't have that like consistent data point to compare against. And another thing I was just going to say there is like, think about what are surveyable events as well. So the like random or one-off or regular surveys are one thing, and you don't want to overdo that, especially because like you're not actually getting a lot of new insight if you're doing it too frequently, to Remco's point. But if there's an event or an experience that you want to learn about specifically, then that's a great opportunity to survey the people who were participating in that experience. So like we do send a survey after every single event that we host, and it's always about like, how did this event go? Right after CMX Summit, we send a bigger survey that really tries to understand how we did, because the conference is a lot more complex. We'll survey sometimes after publishing a really big piece of content that we want feedback on. Just anytime that you really want to understand the extent to which your members valued an experience and whether or not you should keep doing that experience or what you should change, that's a great opportunity to survey. And I don't think will feel overwhelming to the member because it's tied into a specific experience rather than the overall community.
You heard it here, folks. You will be getting a survey at the end of this event. Let us know what you thought.
This better be the like highest response rate we've ever gotten in an event survey.
Okay, so Owen asks, there was a mention of using engagement as part of a customer health score, but they wonder, does anyone have experience breaking these into two different scores and having a health score and a customer engagement score? Sophia, Remco?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily. Okay, so yes, we break them down into two scores, but actually we make the community engagement score, how we call it, be part of the health score for some customers. So for some customers, they have a health score in, e.g., a system like Gainsight, which I obviously have to mention, or a system like PlanHat or something else. And then we'll give them a calculation based on super simple types of community engagement to make up a community engagement score to also take into that health score, so that you can add weight to it and basically take it into everything else that you would normally measure in a health score. So that would just include maybe like visits, logins, questions, likes given, likes earned, articles posted, event participation, what else? Peer-to-peer to support, peer-to-peer to support. Wow, peer-to-peer support. I keep saying peer-to-peer the support. Well, there you go. It's a new thing. And for example, also beta group participation, those kinds of things, or posted a new feature idea. So we tie all of those together. We do some kind of mathematical, really cool stuff, which I don't know from the top of my head. And then we turn that into a community engagement score. And then we make that part of the customer health score. So that it at least adds weight to whether or not someone's doing really well. Because someone might not be adopting your product, maybe if it's a B2B case, for example. But if they're super active in the community and they're doing everything they can to get new features suggested or something else, it also tells you something about your relationship, right? So then you should use it and should score for it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really helpful way to look at it. I almost hesitated because I struggle sometimes with scores because I wonder, what are you comparing it to and what's your baseline? I think with some of these scores, it's hard to see where this comparison was pulled from, especially if you're in a very niche community or even comparing B2B to B2C. It's like, what is the score comparing me to? And is it considering the stage of the community I'm at? Like, we just launched, we're very mature. So I think just always be careful with those scores and the data that you're pulling, that you do have a good baseline to compare it to.
That's good advice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jen agrees. She says, thanks for the amazing suggestions, folks. Super learning moment.
Yeah, when we're talking about scoring, because data is sometimes also very boring. Actually, so when people ask me about what is the number one thing that you should be scoring for, that you want to see happen in your community, I actually always quote Holly from Fanafi. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Benify.
I know it's always a debate internally. Oh, this is terrible. So I always say, or she said, I think it was at the CMX conference actually, where she said, so the number one thing you want to achieve, especially if it's a B2B community, is that someone starts engaging because they're using your product, then finds out that they have a lot of like-minded people with the same job, same interests, they want to achieve the same things. And actually, after they leave their current job that uses your tool, they stay a part of the community because they're a professional and it up-levels them and their skills. And so that is not measurable at all unless you ask for feedback. So hey, we're back at MPS, I guess. But but I think that is the ultimate community health score. If that happens, then you know you've done well.
I was going to add too, like build on what Sophia was saying. It's always important to know why you're tracking data before you track it. I think we often fall into a trap of just tracking as much data as possible. Data feels good, it looks good, it makes us look smart, but what decision is that data helping you make is something I always ask. Otherwise, you could end up just tracking a whole lot of data, but not really being able to say with confidence whether it's good or bad, you won't be able to confidently take action based on that data. So to Sophia's point, like a lot of these health metrics, you really do have to benchmark them. And it's not about like, oh, that engagement is good or that engagement is bad, which maybe to some extent you could compare against other companies or something like that. But every community is different. Every company is different. So that's not always very fruitful. Instead, create your benchmark and say, okay, this is what our engagement rate is today. Do we believe we can increase this, or our health score or whatever? Do we think we can increase this? Great. Here's our hypothesis for the things we can do that will increase the health score. We're going to run that experiment and use that data to validate or invalidate that experiment worked. Right. So that's a very specific way to use that data to make a decision about what you're going to build, what you're going to focus on, and to measure whether or not something worked, rather than just objectively looking at the health score and saying, oh, this is good, my community's healthy, or this is bad, my community is not healthy. It's just not really the most effective way to use data and measurement.
Piggybacking off that, can you then answer David and Hannah's question? How long after launching should you wait before analyzing data? 30 days, 60 days, or right away?
Before launching, should you analyze data?
After
so like
launching.
After launching a community, how long should you wait before you start measuring? I mean, I think you could start measuring on day one. Like there's a lot of things that aren't going to come to fruition in community for a while, but like you should be tracking from day one. You shouldn't necessarily be analyzing on day one, but you should at least make sure you're collecting the data that you need in order to make the decisions. And it depends. Depends on like what the experiment is that you're trying to run. Like for some things, you can do it really quickly. Like let's say I wanted to improve our new community member onboarding experience. I can run an experiment, track it, and within a week be able to see whether or not that new welcome message I created increases the number of new members who introduce themselves or who post in the community in the first week. Or you might say, I care about the first 30 days. So you look at it in the first 30 days, right? But if you're looking at like, I want to see how this community experience leads to people buying our product, well, then you're reliant on the sales cycle, right? Maybe you have a 6-month sales cycle if you're a B2B product. So now your experiment, your analysis, you don't want to analyze it after 3 months and say like, well, I guess we drove no sales. If you know that it generally takes 6 months for a sale to close, now you're designing your experience with that your experiment with that new time frame.
Great. Yep. I was reading Rianne's question, which has like 6 questions in one, which I appreciate the enthusiasm. And perhaps, Sophia, this is a good question for you because you're kind of fresh out of this, but what's the best way to structure a beta or a pilot launch? And then is there a good number of users? What types of challenges did you drive? How long should a beta be? Lots of questions.
Lots of questions. All right. I think it'll be helpful to maybe share a little more context around our community. So before we migrated to a new platform, we were using Slack, and we did have that really tight-knit group of super users. I would say it was about 7 to 8 people, so very, very small group. And we had different phases. So we had soft launch, beta launch, confusing, but don't worry, we understood what it meant internally. What we did is that we wanted to bring in people from internally at the company, so our team members, as well as community members. So we brought in that group of super users to test out the new platform, the new community, and give feedback on things like, what do you think of the community architecture, the design? What type of content would you like to see? Just any type of qualitative feedback that they could give us. And on the team member side, like they really helped direct some of the categories, the tags, sharing more information around the technical content that our customers were looking for and they needed. So that, I think, I might be saying this wrong, but I think we were testing for 2 months. And once we launched, I would say, even though it was a launch, it's still that type of like trial period because you're starting to get more community members in. And we actually have a change log that we call where we've made changes based on how community members are using and reacting to the tool. So one of the things that we changed was the way that we categorize forums, like the way that they're organized. So I think in general, it's just start with a small group that you know is going to be active, that's actually going to be able to share thoughtful feedback. And that might be your super users. You might be able to connect with your customer success team and even ask like, who have you been speaking to from your customers that's really involved, that is, they're showing up and they really care. So pull that small list, beta test, make sure to include people internally, people on your team and your customers, and then you can base off of that. Did I miss a question, Beth? I know there are like 3 or 4.
I feel like you actually answered all of them. So
Okay.
Very well done. And we have time for one more attendee question. Remco, I'm going to throw this one to you. This one's from Wesley. So he says, let's say you have a public facing metric like a vote. Then you choose not to action that feedback. How do you handle that? And I feel like that kind of goes into like customer success and product ideation and feedback. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you're just honest and basically direct, saying that you're not going to do anything with it because you need to be clear about that, and then also explain why. So we see this a lot because a large part of our product is product feedback and ideation. So there's across a whole bunch of customers, there are a lot of features being suggested, and this is often a topic that's being discussed. Yeah, I think there's nothing else you can do than say, look, we love it. Thanks for suggesting this feature. We really love that you're an active participant in development of our platform, for example. But we're not going to do this for reasons Y to X. This is something that you can do that is remotely close to your request, maybe, or you don't have anything that's even remotely close to that. It could also be. And then that's it. I mean, ultimately, you're still the final decision maker there. And you should just be upfront with these kinds of things. And also, by the way, if the pendulum swings and the rest of your community joins in on that request and everyone's telling you like, yeah, this is what we need, then you should probably also own up to that eventually and say, look, we were wrong and we're building it now. So, yeah.
Good advice. I remember a product community manager told me that if you listen to everybody's feedback and you implemented everyone's feedback, then you'd end up with a remote control, which is just like has so many buttons and like nobody really knows what they're all for, and it's not user friendly. So good advice.
The one thing that I will say is you need to respond to every suggestion, especially from a business sense, because people are putting their time in and thinking about your product and are super excited. So ignoring something like this, like not responding, is not great, or just bad.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Okay. I'd like to end with one more kind of tweet-sized answer here from each of you. So my question is, what are you most excited for in 2022 when it comes to your community and what your community is doing in the next year? Sophia, do you want to start us off?
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're making me fit it into like a tweet size. There's so many things.
Just bullet points.
I'll try to bullet point. I would say I'm really excited because our community is going to grow and expand a lot this year. So I'm really excited to actually be hiring a community manager pretty soon. And I'm super stoked to be seeing the impact that not only they're going to get to have on the community, but the extra level of value that we're going to bring to our community. It was longer than a tweet, maybe a thread.
A thread. Remco?
Yeah, so I'm going to be the boring product or marketing guy, I guess, or something. So I think two things. So one is we're looking to really lean into more other digital journeys than just the standard sort of community question and answer, connection, sharing best practices, those kinds of things. So we're really going to look into trying to mold community to be more of a customer hub type of thing. And the second thing I think is, how do I call that? I don't know. We're gonna be closer, I think, to customer success, and I mean this is also logical given all of the stuff that has happened to our company. But I think digital customer success and basically everything that happens there and how you're helping customers and whether or not you're using education or video or whatever, it's gonna be super cool.
That was also super cool. David?
Hybrid CMX Summit.
Damn.
Mic drop. You heard it here first, folks. That's a pretty big. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Have you set a date yet?
No. Oh. There's literally no news, but I'm just very excited. Basically, I'm just really hopeful and excited that we might be able to do an in-person CMX Summit this year and see all of your faces in person because,
awesome.
God damn it, I miss all of you.
That's a pretty big tweet. And on that
note, the first one was 3 words.
On that note, thank you so much to all of our panelists, Remco, Sophia, David. Thank you for making time to share your insights and your advice and your experience. I speak for all of our attendees when I say I gained a lot of knowledge, and I'm sure everybody else did here as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
This was awesome. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth. You're an awesome moderator.
That is true.
Ditto.
Well, I am excited to talk about a few things just before we sign off. The first thing is March Metrics Madness. Okay, folks, this is our first ever themed month at CMX. All of our events, resources, frameworks, and guides we release this month are going to focus on metrics, which ones to track, how to track them, how to choose the right ones, and how to ultimately prove the value and the ROI of your community. So March Metrics Madness. Speaking of events, our next CMX event is the 2022 Community Industry Report, AMA. This report is our annual flagship report on the impact and value of the community industry. It is a snapshot of the biggest changes year over year and an invaluable resource for community professionals. Don't miss this event. Last but not least, the learning doesn't stop there. Check out Insided's upcoming event and take on the 8-week Customer Health Challenge. Go from red to green as you burn the churn. I do love a rhyme. Sign up at burnthechurn.club. And this graphic, I mean, how can you not? Okay, thank you again so much, Sophia, Remco, David, for making this time. The event was recorded, so don't forget we will be emailing everybody to let them know when that's published. Quick shout out, this event would definitely not have been possible without the work of Marcia Drucker, the Senior Program Marketing Manager at Bevy, and of course, Mark Woodworth, our ever-patient director and stage manager, who makes our events so unbelievably seamless. Marcia is going to share the link for you all to join the CMX community in the chat. The conversation continues in our Slack community and our Facebook group. I will see you there. Thanks for joining.